What's up? What's up? What's up? Legendary Talks here, episode 76, I think. I legitimately have no idea what I'm wearing right now, but I am feeling it. How you guys doing this evening? Welcome. Welcome, Sydney. Thank you for always being so supportive. Hey, Paul, we have the legendary Paul Alexander. He has just joined, and I think he's going to join the conversation right now. Hey, Ingrid. Paul, if you're having trouble joining, I can request you as well, so just let me know. Paul is a major NY legend, and I'm very excited to chat with him. He has a lengthy, long New York cultural history, and I cannot wait to chat. So, Paul, are you requesting me, or you want me to request you? Let me try you. How's everyone feeling today? What do you think of my outfit? Like I said, I don't know what the heck it is, but I am feeling it. Just ask you to join. Oh, there we go. We got it. Good. Hi.
Hey.
How you feeling?
I'm gay. How are you?
Great. Did you figure out how to join, or did I ask you? I don't know.
You asked me.
Got it. I knew I'd have to do that. First of all, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. So I do this thing called Legendary Talks. This is my 76th episode since quarantine. What are you drinking, first of all?
Juice. Brown juice.
Belvedere and soda.
I'm drinking Johnny Black.
Cheers.
Cheers.
First of all, you're looking young and fabulous, by the way.
Lies.
Okay, so I do this thing. It's called Legendary Talks, and basically we celebrate people of culture here.
Mm-hmm.
And some are very well known, some are not that well known. It makes no difference to me. It's just we celebrate people's cultural contributions, specifically New York, 2000s, 90s, that kind of stuff. But not necessarily. But it's a lot of people like that. So I thought that you would be an amazing person to chat with and to celebrate. So
thank you for thinking of me.
So how would you describe kind of who you are and what you do, like in New York, let's say?
Who I was?
No, who you are.
I don't know that I'm still that person.
Okay, so if someone didn't know you at all, how would you describe yourself?
Well, I mean, in the 90s, I was very active in the clubbing, nightlife world that New York had. It was very magical back then. And so I was, dubbed myself the voice of the 90s.
Which you were.
And Johnny Dynell is sort of the one that pushed that moniker. But, I used to do voice-over emceeing at a club called Jackie 60 in the 90s that was extremely popular and underground and influential.
Can you speak up? It's a little hard to hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm saying I used to MC at Jackie 60, a nightclub in the 90s in the meatpacking district that was very underground and influential.
Okay. I will contest that all that's true. And then are you from Jamaica? Where are you from?
I was born in Jamaica.
Yeah. And how long were you there for?
Until I was 7, and then I moved to the North Bronx. So I grew up in the Bronx.
Okay.
And I grew up at the time when hip-hop started. When I was in junior high school, hip-hop started. So I was basically the age that it was marketed to. And, that was from the beginning. I know hip-hop from,
amazing.
Day one.
What's one takeaway from Jamaica? What's one influence from Jamaica you think that you took with you?
Probably the emceeing started, at the base of it starts in Jamaica. It's definitely, rapping, there's so much of Jamaican music that influenced American and English music. Just subtle things that influence so much.
And do you still feel connected to Jamaica, or are you kind of so far removed from that?
So far removed from that.
Got it. Okay. So Bronx when you're 7, And
Hmm.
so what, like, is that kind of like Grandmaster Flash, or like what were the main things that were happening around, like that you remember?
Oh, well, I'm older than that. I told you I was 7 when I got here. So that happened when I was in junior high school and high
Oh
school.
yeah, okay.
So as a kid, I was Michael Jackson, Jackson 5.
Got it.
That came out, Foster Silvers, and that kind of teen pop was what I was marketed as a kid as far as music. But there was everything. There was so much.
Who, I guess, either style-wise or a singer, who do you think influenced you most up until that point? Whether it be Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, who kind of blew your mind?
Barry White.
Really?
Yeah, Barry White was the shit. And I remember one night my mom went out to a party and we were like, ah, why are you going out? Why are you going out? And then in the morning we woke up and she had an autographed picture of Barry White to my sister and myself. She met him that night at a party. She went out with my uncle and he, got her to meet Barry White. And so I was like, oh my gosh, you met a star. That was like the first sort of star thing that happened in my world.
I'm from Detroit, and my babysitter at the time, her friend from high school's sister was going to be on Solid Gold, and that was Madonna. So that was my introduction to something like that. So,
Oh, really?
like,
Yeah.
my friends, like my babysitter's friend from high school, her sister was going to be on Solid Gold, and I was like, okay, let's watch. It was Madonna, what kind of blew my mind at the time. So I can relate.
Almost the
Okay,
same story,
so
yeah.
was hip hop, do you think, have a major influence on you, or what do you think?
No, not so much, because
Yeah, just what's happening around you.
I like disco,
Yeah,
and I was a little more bougie, honestly.
yeah. What so what's the first nightclub you ever went to, like in the city, not in the Bronx?
Xenon, a disco. It was a competitor to Studio 54.
Yep.
And my best friend, one of my best friends in high school, a girl I met in 10th grade, she used to go every Saturday and Friday and knew the DJ and had an older girlfriend that would drive. And so she would drive and they would always just get in. So they would go every weekend and we bonded as friends and she started having me shop with her to buy stuff to go to Xenon. And finally I somehow, talked to my mother and got her to let me go. So I went with Claudia to Xenon, and that was the first club that I went to, like a disco.
And describe, was your mind blown away, or like what was that? You walked in the door and were you like,
Yeah, I was pretty blown away. It was pretty incredible. Like, they are also like, studio was a theater, so Xenon was also a theater, and it had a balcony, and back in the disco era, the ladies' room was the place to go. And so the ladies' room was always the scene. It was just where everything happened, whatever you needed, whatever was going to happen was going to happen in the ladies' room. So that was amazing. And the dance floor was similar to studio that you danced on where the stage would have been, but it was leveled to street level. And they had, studio had those lights that came down. The Xenon had things that came down, but they were more like ping pong machines, and they had bumper sensors around them that people would bump their grind on them, and they would light up the whole thing. So it was interactive.
yeah, no, that's what I envisioned your first club experience being, basically. So mine was, I'm from Detroit, like I said, and a girl in ninth grade, her uncle owned the big club, like the cool club. So I, of course, made it my life's mission to become friends with her, which I did, and I basically asked her / begged her every single day for months, when can we go, when can we go, when can we go? And one day she just turned around and she said, he said we can go. And I swear like I heard angels sing. And same thing, when I walked in the club, it was like, the lights, the smoke, and I went directly to the dance floor and just that's how I remember it. And the next day I went to the mall and they said, were you at that club last night? And the rest is history. What were we going to say?
What was the clientele of that club? What did it look like?
It was Detroit, so it was really diverse, and it was very, soul and music. Music was the music. The dance floor was the focus of that whole club. It was very kind of warehousey, and it was like '90s, so it was like warehousey. It was about the lights, the music, and the dance floor. That's it. It wasn't like a glamorous looking club. It was an old theater actually too, but not glamorous by any means.
Mm-hmm.
It's still there. I went to Detroit about 2 years ago, and I went there again. I said, "This is the first dance floor I ever stepped foot on." So.
Wow. And what was the song?
I walked in, and I remember being drawn directly to the dance floor, and I remember like that moment vividly. So anyway,
what was the song that brought it in those days? Like, what was your song?
What songs, or what particular song that?
There's of course a few, but the one that was like, oh my God, they're playing.
It was like Technotronic and Soul to Soul around that era. So it was very all that Snap, I Got the Power, that kind of stuff, And then hip hop. Detroit was diverse in musical styles, but also diverse in people. It was just a really diverse environment. So, okay. So when did you move to New York?
I told you when I was 7, so that was 1970.
No, I mean, when did you move to New York City?
Oh, Manhattan.
Yeah, Manhattan. When did you get out the Bronx?
My mother's cousin just reminded me of this recently. We went to dinner, and she reminded me that it was the day after my college graduation. So
that's a good time.
That was 1985.
And what area did you move to?
Chelsea.
And what was those first couple of years in New York like? You in New York City. I mean, I guess you're like a New Yorker, but like I think probably living on your own in New York is different than living in the Bronx, right?
So this was 81, and I'd already started going to clubs, and there was a variety of clubs, a variety of style, a variety of music, and everything was good. And so there was Peppermint Lounge, which was like rockabilly, still new wave-ish. Danceteria, I think, was still happening then.
You had gone to I never went to Danceteria, and I am in my head. I said I based every party I do to this day off of this fictitious night of like Danceteria mixed with Studio 54, which is like, Keith Haring and Madonna before they're like Madonna performing before she's famous. Keith Haring kind of like working there at Basquiat, tagging the walls. Rich, poor, black, white, gay, straight. That's how I've done my parties based off of this night of Danceteria in my head that doesn't exist. I made it up. So
Right.
But how was Danceteria? Like I never got obviously the opportunity to go there, but what was it? Like was it amazing for you, or was it just kind of one of the many places you went to?
Well, it was just one of the many clubs that was happening, but it was pretty great, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I had probably one of the best club experiences I had in my life in Danceteria.
Oh wow!
Of course, I was, tweaked a bit that night, but that was like, one of the few times that ever happened. I was young.
Yeah, I find sometimes too these things that even I've done, seem so amazing to like other people, but you're kind of like you're just doing them at the time. You're not really taking it in.
Yeah.
It's Danceteria Tuesday, somewhere else Monday.
Yeah, we used to go to Danceteria though, and it was amazing. Third floor, I think, was the floor we used to go, and Johnny Dinell played, and Justin Strauss, and Freddie Bastone, and it was either one of those three, and they were all great. And I remember Darling Nikki playing when my god sister Nikki died, and that was she's talking to me kind of a dramatic, like crying on the dance floor, kind of, because you're young, and it's like, my god sister's dead, and crying on the dance floor to Darling Nikki.
That's a good memory, actually. Not a unique one. Who was your crew at the time? Your first kind of New York City crew?
My roommate Claudia, and back then I had also a friend from high school named Henry, and Edward, and they were a fun duet. They were like Laverne and Shirley. Although the four of us were very close. Those two were like Laverne and Shirley, and they just cracked us up, and they did adventures and stuff like that. So the four of us was really the first running mates that I had. And then by 85, I started, the House of Fields part of my life started. So then
You started what?
My House of Fields era started.
Yeah.
So then I started hanging out with like JoJo.
So it's interesting because I want to talk about this for sure. And can you talk just a little bit louder? So I want to make sure everyone can hear you.
I'm sorry, I get comfortable. Yeah.
I know you're going, down, down and then back up. Okay, so it's interesting because Pat Fields. I was talking to someone recently about Pat Fields. That's I think 28 now, and they, to be honest, were pretty unfamiliar with Pat Fields at all. I kind of said Sex and the City, all those different things. So if, I was like, wow, that's really tragic that somebody would not know. Pat Fields to me is one of the most important people New York City ever saw. Period. Like end of discussion. So. Who, if you had to describe Pat Fields, let's say to me, and if I didn't know her at all, and you describe her to me, but like from your perspective, explain Pat Field.
All right. Well, Patricia Field owned a store on 8th Street that was, prior to internet, it was the hub. It was the daytime hub for all nighttime activity. And all the night people crossed that store because it was on 5th Avenue and 8th Street, and we were either in the East Village or the West Side, and so it was center. And so we would cross paths to get, from one side to the other and stop at Pat Field, and you would kill time, and you would get brought up on where to go, what was happening, talk about events or magazines and stuff, because the kids were fabulous that worked there. They were featured in the downtown magazines as models because there was this thing at the time about downtown stars that started at that point that, making stars of just people in New York that were fabulous.
What years was that? Like
these were the 80s, the 85 to, 89, 90.
Yeah.
That I'm thinking of. But prior to that, she had this store on 8th Street. She started from one store on Waverly Place around the corner by, around the park, the Washington Square Park. And she sold pants. And then she started selling jeans, skinny jeans, the disco jeans. And that was like, where do you get skinny disco jeans? You went to that store. So then she moved and opened her own store because she had a partner in that one, and she opened her own store on 8th Street, Patricia Field, and that just grew into the woman that you know as Sex and the City, because she was always finding the trends, the things that people would want to wear. She was very astute on that, and she wasn't afraid to accept people that were different. She just took them as, you want to work, come and work, and show. She had transsexuals and drag queens and drug addicts and ex-prostitutes working in her store because she just thought, well, you're somebody that needs a job. Yep. And so it was a wacky set of employees for a retail store because they weren't conventional. They weren't, like, hi, man, help you kind of people. They were like, what do you want?
This is not the Gap,
It was not the Gap experience, but everyone had a look, and it was amazing. And so in the 80s, she sold little designers that would make something like what you're wearing now. That's fabulous. Can you make it and put it in my store? And she'd give you a little section. And so she collected all these little designers. She traveled to France to get them. She went all over to get them. So Andre Walker was one of those designers. And in the 80s, Andre took off in the detail magazine paper world, and the employees in the store were the models for the collection because he didn't have any supermodels to put it on. There weren't supermodels then, there were top models. But he didn't have top models to put them on then. So he just got his friends, the kids at the store. So Leslie McKay became a big, gorgeous, legendary face of the 80s. And Richard Alvarez had a quirky look. He was missing his teeth, and he wore glasses, and he looked like Jerry Lewis, we called him. He was a downtown Jerry Lewis. So people like that came out of her store. There were so many fabulous people that were just kids, By the 90s, that's when I got involved, basically, and it had evolved into street fashion, and she was picking up, like, She would go to surplus and buy like hockey wear, or she pioneered the neoprene body surf look. She found them at some, sporting good. Uh, what are those things in the convention center? Like she
Trade
would
show?
go trade shows. She
Yeah.
went to weird sort of trade shows. She would go to flea markets and buy out factories. She would shop any and anywhere. She had like Gautier in the store at a point. She bought out Steven Sprouts when he was going out of business. She would find fashion where she could find it. She was just, this is what you should be wearing. I know this is going to sell. So trends were born there, like the black leggings. That trend was born there. Tube skirts. That was pushed and gone onto the streets there, like cheerleading skirts. That was an accident. Myra bought them in a trade show, and it just took off in little mini. So by the 90s, all the stylists used to come to the store. Misa Martin shopped in the store. She brought Mary J. Blige in when Mary was nobody, and Mary was just a nervous girl. Her and LaTanya used to come in the store with Misa, and they'd shop, and they'd buy shit. And Misa would just come in the store. At some point, Misa was busy. Puppy would come in because he needs for 112. It was that kind of a thing. Foxy Brown bought her outfit, the sheer with the brown collar velvet suit with the floppy hat. She bought that in the store. She started a fight that day. Because she saw it in the window, and it was the last one. And so I took it off the mannequin, and the button popped off. And so the little blonde white girl that was helping her, because normally she worked with Paisley as Black Queen that was really flamboyant, and she liked Paisley. And Paisley was like the Hot Rocks video, with her in the metal and that sort of cyber look. He used to dress like that all the time, and I think she was inspired by Paisley, definitely, for that video. But Paisley used to ride the train with like a mohawk and a feather jacket and eyeshadow going back. Foxy Brown liked him. He wasn't there that day. So we got the jumpsuit with the floppy hat exactly as she has it on, out the window, and Dana went downstairs to sew on the button, and Foxy's like, where's my jumpsuit? This bitch is trying, and she got all ghetto on her. And she started arguing with her, and Dana was trying to like act like, oh no, everything's fine, everything's good. And she got all like ghetto on her. Two homeboys were in there buying Stussy hats. They're like, yo, that's Foxy Brown. You better recognize. Back to Dana with her fight. It was so funny watching Foxy Brown just like, and we're like, calm down, here it is. And the little girl was sewing it downstairs and brought it back to Dana. And Dana's like, here it is. She bought the jumpsuit. It's in that video. Gotta get you home tonight. Hatfield store was incredible. There's like every pop star came through there, all the supermodels, like everyone came through there, all the stylists. They would bite stuff off the store and put it on the Chanel runway. It was like that was in Pat Fields last season, stuff like that. It was very trendy.
Couple things. First of all, Mary Paul is on here saying hello and she loves you. Legendary
Hey,
Mary
Paul, love you, hon.
We love you, Mary Paul. And then I remember being there when you said it, it just crossed my mind. I remember being there one time, and Destiny's Child, a very young Destiny's Child, was in there buying those Tupac dresses. And I was with my friend Sydney, who's on here, and she was also buying her Tupac dress. So, like, yeah, it was definitely, you go there. Every time you went there was someone like the current, either up and coming, really hot person at the time was going there.
Yeah.
But the first time I came to New York, I came on the 4th of July weekend. The first time I ever visited, and I was 17. And I went to Pat Fields, got my first thing about something at Pat Fields, and we went to Sound Factory in the Limelight that night. 6 months later, I lived in New York and worked at the Limelight. But anyway, my first ever purchase in New York was at Pat Fields.
The one that was on you had
to,
the 6th Avenue store. It was the place where you had to go to get that little something to make your outfit pull it together, Now,
because I don't know Pat that well. We were like cordial to each other. I never got a chance to know her that well. Let me ask, I have a couple questions about her. What do you think her thirst for culture is? Because to me, like I said, I think she's one of the most important cultural people New York City has ever seen in their whole history. So what is it about her and was it more about, to me, I think what she's done culturally is even more important than what she's done for fashion. So like, that's just my own take. But do you think she cared more, like you're saying, she had all those kind of like offbeat people at the store, which is so, really, really mind-blowing if you really think about it. No one else in the whole world was doing that at the time. So is it more about her love of culture or love of fashion with her? I don't know. What makes her tick and go,
I think it's her love of people.
Yeah, me too. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Her connection with people and things, right?
Well, yeah, I don't think it's premeditated, though. I think she just gravitated to the people that she likes,
But she felt, you mean? I've always gotten that.
She never had any sort of like, she wasn't like Madonna, who was like, I want to be. Hatfield was just like, I'm just doing what I do.
And feeling it, kind of go with her feeling.
Yeah, she never ever had a map or any premeditation, and she just was doing, and I want to do this now.
Do you have any Madonna stories from either 80s, 90s, anything?
Well, the Danceteria, the first night I went to Danceteria, we got in the elevator and I met Debbie Mazar. Because I went with Claudia. By then, Claudia started, instead of going to college, she started in the music industry from the bottom up and was doing promotion. Because she was young, like 20 years old. They're like, send her out and she would have to go meet the DJ. So that's how I started going clubbing with Claudia as her plus one. And so you'd be on the list, so you guarantee you didn't have to wait. Because back then you had a red velvet.
Shout out to whoever Claudia is. I don't know her, but she sounds like an icon. Claudia. We love you, Claudia.
Yes. Well, she made an icon. Anyway, she would be on the list already. And so, this, we did this across the board. She worked at Profile and Tommy Boy, the two like hip hop labels. And so we would go to the Bronx to the Devil's Nest and see Salt and Pepper and Run DMC and Heavy D and the Boys. And then we do the Latin freestyle because she promoted Judy Torres and Nocera. So we saw the Cover Girls and Seduction, Michelle Visage, people know her. And La India, like all that Latin freestyle. Mm-hmm. And so that was where I was in the 80s. Like, that was the scene. It was Latin freestyle. There was
and then
Run DMC, kind of Heavy D and the Boys hip hop, like bouncing around still.
What about balls? Did you start going to balls, or when did you start going to balls? Or
I never liked the ball scene.
Why?
I just thought voguing was sort of silly.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it, and I know the talent that it takes to do it.
Yeah.
But me personally, so there's a funny story with that. So Madonna did Vogue, and then everything was like Vogue, Vogue, Vogue. So MTV contacts Patricia Field's store, and Willie Ninja's involved, and Aldana, who's another legendary fierce voguer from the pioneering days, and Fidel and Perfidia. I'm working at the store at this point, and Perfidia's like, we're going to be on MTV. We're going to be voguing. Do you want to come? And I'm like, I don't know how to vogue. She's like, all you got to do is this. And she taught me like the window washing sort of vogue move. And she's like, come on. So we got on MTV voguing, and it was primarily about Willie Ninja. But
did he work at Hatfield's?
No, but he was House of Field because he had closed the Ninjas, and he's in the legendary vault at Grand Street, which will be a documentary coming out soon called Love is the Legend, and please look for it.
Maripol was just telling you about that today, by the way.
Love is the Legend, yeah.
Yep. So I got to meet him. I met him a few times when I first moved to New York, and he was a lovely, lovely human being, as you know.
And that's so sweet.
The best. I don't want to jump ahead, but do you watch Pose?
Yeah.
And do you like Pose? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I love Pose. It's great. I mean, it's like, the first watching it, I was like, well, that's not real. Well, that's not. And then you're like, well, you know what? It's a TV show, and it's a pretty good TV show, and just relax. And it's not authentic. It's not real, but it can't be. It's like, it's a fantasy show,
I tell everyone, because don't work for Post, but I probably should because I promote it so hard to everybody. I say the music and the fashion alone is worth it, just watching that, and then you get into the characters and the story. So,
Well, the fashion's not authentic. That's the reason why I was like, well, that's not how you wore your hair in the 80s, and that's not what they would have. So then I had to relax and be like, okay, it's a TV show.
But the truth is, it's really to educate people and not people that were there. That's the truth. I keep saying this all the time. Several of my straight male friends are the ones that kind of, number one, told me about it when it first came out, but they're learning so much from this. So that it's really not for, I guess, you or me, really, when you think about it in those terms.
It's a fantasy version of what happened. And so, you really don't want to put it in the projects. You want it to be in a beautiful setting. So
don't get me wrong, I love it. But
it's just, we don't judge it as harshly,
It's not a documentary, it's a television show. So
it's a fantasy, and you fall in love with it because it's pretty. If you saw what it really was like, you might be like, ooh,
Well, the reality is, too, it's an all-trans cast, which is unbelievably amazing. So that's another, okay, so let's talk about Jackie 60. I got to go there when I first moved to New York. And that was the meatpacking district. When the meatpacking district was the meatpacking district, it was stinky and dangerous and dirty and amazing. So, tell me about Jackie 60 and what that experience was like for you. And how many years was that?
It was 10 years.
Wow.
And it was really great, a fun experience. I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. And to me, that was like a truly anything goes. I mean, my first job was at the Limelight. And I feel like Jackie 60 was even wilder sometimes than the Limelight. It was like anything goes there.
Well, Michael Alig, I remember you from Disco 2000. Yeah. That was just like Kids Gone Wild.
Yeah.
Where Jackie 60 was very smart. It was very adult. And there was sexy and all the vices, but it was very smart. It was Chi was brilliant, and so it had like an elevated level that you cannot duplicate anyplace else at this point. It was
but there was a lot of performance, sort of performance based. I saw Debbie Harry perform there. I think she performed. Maybe it was the Debbie Harry lookalike contest and she performed it or something, if I remember correctly. It was like always really interesting. Like she performed at her own lookalike contest. It was like all these really interesting things and like the, Stevie Nicks and all that kind of stuff. It was sophisticated but extremely wild, basically, so.
Yeah.
And there was like literally nothing like it before or after. It's one of those things. Nothing,
No. And so once I started traveling as the Ones, then I would see in Europe, there'd be people doing things that the emceeing on the mic thing. And it's like, you're not quite getting that right,
Yeah.
Because it had me emceeing on the mic to the music. And then there would be dancers in theme, and they would be dedicated to the theme. So the themes might be rubber nurses, which is like a fetish nurse theme. Or it might be, something weird like the Blitz, the bombs over England. And, they were smart, they were twisted sort of points in history or, just weird sort of subjects that make a good party.
So if you had to pick, what are your top clubs like of all time?
Well, just because it was the first would be Xenon would be on that list.
Yeah.
The Paradise Garage. There was no other experience like the Paradise Garage.
I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second. What's interesting is that I've interviewed 76 people, and the most commonly thing said is Paradise Garage changed my life. It's like, because I always think danceteria, that's just where my head goes, but Paradise Garage is the most talked about life-changing club experience on here, so interesting.
Because the Paradise Garage was unlike the other clubs at the time that it was just about music.
Yeah.
And so you went up the ramp and you turned and went in, and the first room was locker rooms, and people would change from their street clothes and put on sweats, you know, tank tops, little shorts, anything that they could, the least amount of clothes they could wear, and put away their like intense clothes, because it was not glamorous when we first started going there. It was not glamorous. It was just about a dark room. There was no alcohol, so you'd make your own party, and you know, people just went there to hear the music. It was like this big room with the most amazing speakers, and Larry just going crazy playing music that would be like, oh my God. And, you know, a common was like, oh my God, Larry, don't do this. You know, like that kind of like the music would take you there.
And what years was Paradise Garage? Kind of like late 80s, basically, right?
No, it started in the, you don't quote me on this, but I remember Garage when I was in high school, so that's somewhere like 79-ish. I kind of could remember that, like 78, 79. That's my high school years.
The Keith Haring thing that you hosted with me and Fat Fine Freddy, remember that one a couple years ago? He told me a story there. He said that he brought Keith to Paradise Garage, and that Keith had not heard of it at that point. And he brought him in. I think it was kind of really hard to get in, I think, you know, whatever.
You had to be a member, yeah.
So Keith went to the DJ booth. I think maybe even Fab introduced him to Larry, and they were talking, whatever. And so 2 or 3 weeks passed, and Keith is now at, you know, there every week and in the DJ booth with Larry, and Fat Fry Freddy can't even get to them. And he's like, I'm the one that brought you here. So like, he's like, oh, like, it was a very funny story. I love it.
So, so Keith did his first party of life there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was like
I know the invite. Yeah.
The invite, right? So at the time, I remember going to Keith's loft, asking for an invitation to this party. So I'm like waiting for him to, and he's on the phone, and he's like, Madonna. I'm like, don't invite Madonna. Don't invite Madonna. Because at this point, Claudia, my girl I was talking about, was eyeing Jelly Bean, who was dating Madonna. Or Madonna was dating Jelly Bean. And so Claudia he was trying to get like a breakaway from Madonna to get to Claudia, because they had the same look. Like they're both blonde, big titty kind of white girls. And so I remember going to Keith, don't invite Madonna, don't invite Madonna. And then he gets off the phone and he gives me the invitation, and I get to the party, and in the middle of the party, Madonna fucking performs. And I'm like, oh God, why did I even say that to him? She fucking performed. And she did like a virgin on the bed for the first time. And it was like, and he had designed a suit for her. He painted the pink leather suit. The pink leather suit, she peeled out of the suit and had on the lingerie and got on the bed and did like a virgin for the first time. And I was like, oh my God, you stuck your foot in your mouth that time. But whatever, it didn't matter. I'm sure Keith didn't listen to me. He didn't care about me.
I wonder if Madonna has that stuff still. I often wonder, does she still like have that, or like get lost in the
she still has that suit. I think so. I think she's.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope she was. I had a dream once that is a real dream, like your sleeping dream, that I was helping Madonna edit her closet down, saying, get rid of this, keep this, get rid of this, keep this, and it was fun. That was a fun dream. Okay, so if you, like a couple besides, like, you know, specific clubs, there's any, like, besides, you know, Party of Life and stuff like that, any specific parties that set out as being these, like, legendary parties kind of all time?
Club Cheetah.
Oh, okay, we're not there yet. Hold on. Don't, because that's where we met. So, okay, so my first, like, you know, introduction to you, I did the door at Cheetah, which was this unbelievably amazing party. And that was kind of me. I'd been in New York a couple of years at that point. I had my, you know, I had been working in clubs since the minute I stepped into New York. So that was me like growing into myself and that, you know, around that time. And that party to me was, you know, kind of like the next phase of New York City nightlife. It was such an important party because it was hip hop at the pinnacle, a very pinnacle time. It was like Biggie and Foxy Brown and Lil' Kim and all these people coming. There's also like Donatella Versace and Robert De Niro and all these are like really amazing, great mixture of amazing. Debbie Mazur was coming there all the time, who, you know,
It
And
was like Jackie 60, like an underground club. They could come and have fun.
yeah, it was amazing. And
Hmm.
so you were on the mic there every week, I think, right? No, I
Just
remember
when I
you.
was drunk. Just when I
That's what
was
I'm saying.
drunk.
But I remember walking in one night and you were like, everybody take, I can't do you, but like, everybody take off your clothes. I'm like, who the frick is that? And then I remember you coming every week and just being like this, like, interesting little coy little thing coming there. And I think we just connected there. And from the minute I met you, I liked you from the very first time I met you. You know, and also, to be honest, it was just such a mixture of people there that I thought you added such an interesting, thing to that party. I thought you were a very important part of the party, in my opinion. So,
Well, I don't know. That take off your clothes thing sounds, it's very Jackie 60, but it also reminded me of Juicy, that other party that I did with
yeah,
Lisa and Belinda, the
yeah,
stripper party. Like,
yeah.
that was more appropriate for that. But,
Well, I'm paraphrasing maybe, but
mhm.
Lisa and Belinda both have been on here, by the way. You know, for people that don't know, you have this amazing voice, and you are on the mic all the time, and it's just such a special, only you type thing. I can't explain it. You're the only one that can do it like that. So.
Okay, so getting back to the original question. So, yeah, it's a combination of my Jamaican heritage, the toasting, because I grew up when ska was like the popular music, and then rock steady and reggae. And then there was always toasting. By the time reggae came, there was toasting that it's like, with that is, it goes over dub music. And so that sort of emceeing. And then I came to New York, and then you got WBLS launched, and there was Frankie Crocker and Shep Pettibone and
Yep.
those MCs that just had those sort of bedroom voices. And then there's Barry White and Lou Rawls and Isaac Hayes with these sort of, baby, there's Arthur Prysock, like these men with these voices. Johnny Hartman had that kind of voice. And so I remember I went to high school in the city, art and design, yay. Being in art and design, there was this guy named Barry White, not Barry White, but Barry White. It was this black guy, bald-headed at the time, really handsome, dark-skinned guy, and he had a deep voice. And the teacher, substitute teacher, taking attendance, and she's like, Barry White, and he's like, here, and she just was like, I saw like wet panties kind of a moment from his voice, and I was like, that's a good voice.
Yeah.
So with his inspiration and all those other people, I was like, well, I'm gonna go for that deep voice. So yeah, that's how I.
No, I love your voice, as does many people. Okay, so I do want to talk about the ones, obviously. So how did the ones come about? Like, was it something you guys kind of? I always envision it like and this is me making it up, and you'll obviously tell the story, but that three friends said we should make a song, or was it like really thought out, or how was it?
No, it was pretty like that. Pretty much like that.
That's what I thought. And then, so you guys you were very big in Europe, obviously, and you had one number one song, but I think you had a lot of like hit songs. Were you kind of shocked when you had a number one song, or were you kind of like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was very like, the band formed because we met each other at Patricia Field.
Yeah.
Actually, no, we met Nisham at Boy Bar. So Boy Bar goes on the list of the places that's legendary, that changed my life. So Boy Bar was this bar on 8 St. Mark's Place on the east side, and it was Thursday night was a magic night. There was drag shows. It was a gay bar called Boy Bar. It's mentioned in the Book of Love song, And so it was like the place where all the boys of our age, young boys, went. It was the Boy Bar, and it wasn't like the townhouse uptown where older men came to pick them up. It was just all young boys. And there were some older men, like Mugler used to come there with his limousine and try and, fill the car up. It was that kind of. But back then, people came out. Like nightlife brought people out. So, Boy Bar, we met Nisham. I met Nisham on the dance floor right before the show started. And then he started working at Pat Field. And so we started, at the time there was Squeezebox, this party at Don Hill's, and it was a gay rock and roll party. Well, you know, it was open to all. But most of the people that performed were drag queens or gay boys in makeup. And they sang rock and roll songs with a live band, the Squeezebox band, they were amazing. They could play any song you wanted. So you'd pick your 4 favorite songs and you'd perform them. You know, you'd plan it. It wasn't like, you know, karaoke. It was like, you know, next week, legendary Damon, you know, and you'd plan your show. And so I did it. JoJo did it. Nisham did it. Because Nisham was known to he was famous. And so we all did it, and because we knew each other, we were like, will you sing backup with me? So I sang with both of them. They sang. We all sang together with each other at some point, and we're like, that sounds pretty good. So it was very like, we knew we sounded good together with a band. And so when Nisham had the movie Flawless and Joel Schumacher was like, we're looking for music for the soundtrack, he's like, you're the only person I know that can make music. Can you help me write this song? So we wrote the song, and I was like, JoJo will help sell it, you know. So we pulled JoJo in, and so that's how that formed.
Yeah, no, I always thought you guys kind of just said, you know, kind of like, let's do a song. And then it kind of blew up this amazing thing. And that was you know, is that something you kind of had dreamt about or envisioned? I thought it was kind of just like an interesting, like, you know, road taking you that way. How you know, had you dreamed of being this kind of famous, you know, singer or, you know, whatever?
Well, yeah, I've been doing songs since 1991. Like the Jackie Hustle, the theme song for Jackie 60 was the first song. And then David Morales was DJing. He liked that song, and he liked my emceeing. He put me on the next song I did. And so I did songs throughout the 90s. Every year I was doing another song. I went to London and did songs. I worked with Ryuichi Sakamoto, which was an amazing experience. I did 2 songs with him. And then, so that's why Nisham asked me about that. You know, like, can you help me do a song? But what was the original question?
Just did you envision yourself being this like famous person, which you did? I didn't know you were going to music that long.
So yeah, then the answer to that was that we did it, and it didn't really go anywhere because Joel didn't make a soundtrack to the album, and so the song was just a song. But then this, we were signed to a small label, and the woman that was like the efficient one at the label took it to one of those conventions, and she put earphones on and everybody's head, and she's like, listen to this song, listen to this song, listen to this song, listen to this song. And one person is like, I like this song. He signed it, but then he had it remixed by this Italian duo, and that song was like the song of Ibiza in 2001. And
amazing.
Then we were on top of the pops. It was just like that fast. So it was like after the fact that it blew up.
What's the craziest kind of experience you had while like being in Europe with the ones? I envision that also being kind of a wild time for you guys, just being like clothes everywhere and makeup flying and stuff, you know, like some fishnets flying and a glove going this way, fishing, like, you know, getting ready for a show or something. Is like, you know, that should have been a reality show in itself. What's the craziest thing?
It was all pretty fun. I mean, there was a lot of fun things. I guess the one standing out, and now that Nisham's dead, God rest his soul. When we went to Moscow and in Red Square, they just surrounded him and circled him, and we're like, what's going on? Like, we're not that famous here, you know? Yeah. And so we finally decided that they must have thought he was Mike Tyson, because he was just like a big, like, muscular man. And they were yeah. And there's no black people in Russia. There are no black people. So it's like to be black.
I went there with Khalees. Khalees and I went there for the weekend.
It's a novelty. It's a novelty, black people.
And then who have you met in your whole life that you kind of gagged over? Like one person you're like, oh my God, whether it be, you know, Diana Ross, something like that. Who do you really gag over for real? You're like, oh my God.
Well, it's, you know, I grew up in New York, and I've seen so many people. I grew up at the time where it wasn't polite to gag when you saw somebody. You were just supposed to acknowledge them. And so, I don't know. No one really gags me. I've met a lot of gaggable
Right.
people.
That's a legit answer. I would say I met Tupac and David Bowie right around the same time, and I was a little young, and both of them I was like, oh my God. They both made me kind of stop in my tracks. They have heart skip,
Well, I loved meeting Chaka Khan. I love Chaka Khan.
It's a good one.
And she was like eating ice cream and it was dripping down her hand. And I was like, oh my God. And she's like licking it. And she's like, do you want to lick? Like that stupid shit.
Like,
oh my God, that's Chaka Khan. She wants me to lick it. Oh my God.
You're like, I do actually.
I can't figure it out.
And then what does New York mean to you?
Well, I don't know what's happening in New York with what's going on in the
not
world,
right now.
But New York was everything. It was the place that I traveled around the world, and once we got back to New York, yeah, it was different because people are polite around the world. You get back to New York, and right away there's that black woman. Y'all need to go over there. It's like New York attitude, and you get there and you're just like, oh, New York, and you see the city coming across Queens or whatever that's where you first see the city and you're just like, I love New York. I love New York so much, but I don't know anymore. They've taken all the fierceness out of it and it's become so like you could be anywhere. It doesn't matter anymore. They really stripped away all the fierceness.
Well, I believe what's happening with New York right now, it might get back to that. It might get back to the gritty and creative because New York is being stripped of all the things you're saying are being stripped of it right now because of what's going on in the world. But anyway, okay, so we only have 5 minutes left. I want to talk about Trinkets. So you wrote a play called Trinkets, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I text you many times. I tried to go at least 3 or 4 times. And I was coming in town a lot and I kept missing it. But what was that whole experience for you? How was that for you?
I wish I kept a journal, but I didn't. It was every step of it was incredible. It was very just, well, Nishan doesn't want to perform anymore. The ones are over. What am I going to do with myself?
Yeah.
And then I had a million ideas about a story like that. And it just sort of, I picked my friend Christine and her 2 friends, Geneva and Monet, as the muses. And they're the 3 girls in the story. And then I started remembering my other girls. It's based on the streetwalkers in the 90s, meatpacking district, where I live over there. And so, I used to have to cross them to go to Jackie 60. And, it was 24/7. Well, not 24/7, usually more after dark, but every day of the week. So I just always knew the hookers in the neighborhood when girls used to still walk the street. And so I wrote a play about that and used a girl that I know as the muse and divided her story into 2 different characters and took other girls that I knew, little bits of their story, and I put music to it. And I did it all very naively, I can write a play. And I did. And then I got my friends to put music to it because I don't write music, I only write lyrics. So it was this musical play, and I had a friend that said, whenever you need a theater, I have one. That's actually what made me well, I have that theater, let me try and do something. So I put it all together naively, and I made this play. I got people to be in it. I got my friends to loan me costumes, and it was all done. I had to pay, for set design and stuff like that. But, most of it, I just did it on my, will you do me a favor sort of thing, and people helped me, and then other people came and they liked it, and it was really great. It sold out, and then they extended it, and then we did it again, and it was great. It was a great experience.
Miracle asked, did you film it?
Yeah.
Good, okay. I mentioned to you about 3 or 4 times. I was always texting you, I remember, and it just never was working out for whatever reason. I was coming into town for 2 days and trying to get with it, and I never got to see it, which I regret. But okay, so we're gonna wrap it up. We're almost out of time here. But how can we support you now? None of us are working. We're all kind of these artists with creative type jobs, and nobody's really working. Is there any way we can support you, whether it be even just like, helping you promote something, or, what's a way we can all support you? Anybody watching?
Just love each other and be kind and think of little things that can help each other. I think that would be very supportive to me, to know that you're doing that.
Great, good.
And don't think everything is about you. Like, remember, there's another side to it. So keep your temper down. Keep your tempers down. I see so many people fighting in the street right now. Just we're all pent up. Keep your tempers down. So that's what you can do to help.
Great. That's a great answer. Okay, so like I said, we're here to celebrate people of culture. I do thank you for doing this. I think when I think about you, at least from my New York experience, you've been a constant and a steady, and you've done so much for culture, specifically in New York and then around the world. I'm just really glad that we get to celebrate you this way. You've been an artist to your core and true to yourself the whole time. And you've just been you from the moment I met you, and true to yourself, and like this really amazing New York City artist, inspiring lots and lots and lots of different people in New York, including me over the many years. So I just want to celebrate that, and you. So
thank you so much, and you're pretty terrific yourself.
Thank you. We've loved each other from jump. Love you.
Yes, love you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for doing this. You have a great night. You be safe, and I'll tag you next time one of your crew is going to be on here. I'm going to ask Connie Girl next. So.
Oh yes, she's got stories.
I'll tag you on that one.
Okay,
thank you. Love you. Have a great night.
Bye everybody.
Bye guys. Thanks for watching.
Bye.